High inflation is again becoming a headache for ordinary people here in South Korea. From the price of go-to everyday food products like milk to even subway fares, everything seems to be on the rise. Joining me is our business correspondent, Shin Ha-young. Welcome, Ha-young.
Great to be here, Dami.
So, Ha-young, I'd like to start with the latest figures for consumer prices. What are the numbers?
Well, for September, South Korea's consumer prices rose by 3.7%, which is well over 3%.
Right. Arirang's Kun-woo actually summarized that situation of the September inflation. Why don't we take a look at it first?
Sure.
Consumer prices in South Korea saw their biggest jump in 5 months in September. According to Statistics Korea on Thursday, the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, rose 3.7% year-on-year last month, mainly due to high prices for oil and agricultural products. The cost of petroleum products had dropped almost 26% on-year in July, but rising oil prices in recent months pushed the on-year drop to 4.9% in September, significantly affecting inflation. Prices of agricultural products rose 7.2% on-year last month. Among them, fruit, especially apples and peaches, saw the biggest on-year rises since October 2022. This was caused by poor weather during summer, leading to smaller yields and less fruit being exported. The CPI has been plunging since January this year, when the index was 5.2%, the highest in 2023, dropping as low as 2.3% in July. It rose to 3.4% in August, and again in September to 3.7%. Core inflation, excluding volatile food and energy price changes, also jumped 3.3% on-year in September. At an emergency economy meeting in Seoul on Thursday, Finance Minister Kyung-woo said that inflation will ease as seasonal factors, such as heat and heavy rain, are no longer a concern.
Along with slowing service sector prices, which are usually a major factor for inflation, and core inflation remaining at the 3% level, inflation is expected to stabilize from October.
He added that the ministry will do its very best to stabilize inflation amid uncertainties.
But as price uncertainty remains due to factors such as the recent volatility of oil costs, the government will remain on alert to try to address rising prices through all means.
Kun-woo, 아리랑뉴스.
As we have just seen, inflation shows signs of slowing in the first half of this year. So in July, the government even slashed its inflation outlook for the year from 3.5% to 3.3%. But in the following 2 months, the increase expanded consecutively due to higher oil costs and rising prices for some farm goods.
Now, speaking of rising prices, more price hikes in several other fields are also on the way. Now, walk us through some of the changes, please.
Well, rising milk prices could be burdensome for frequent buyers. And this is because South Korea's major dairy companies have raised their prices for a liter of milk by around 3 to 6% to almost 3,000 won or just over $2. And this comes after the Korea Dairy Committee raised the price of raw or unpasteurized milk starting in October by 8.8% to 1,084 won, which is about 80 US cents per liter. And this is the steepest increase since 2013, when the country introduced its unique system of determining raw milk prices based on production cost rather than supply and demand to protect dairy farmers and facilitate better prices negotiation. And businesses like bakeries and cafes that heavily rely on milk as the primary ingredient for their products are also expected to be hit hard by the extra cost. And consumers too will be hit hard by rising milk prices, with skyrocketing shopping cart prices already putting a dent in their wallets. Now let's take a listen to what some consumers had to say.
As I get older, I find myself drinking about a glass of milk a day, so I tend to choose buy one get one free deals. The cost of dining out has increased to over 10,000 Korean won per meal. I wonder how young people are managing their budgets.
It seems like the prices of meat and seafood have really gone up. Not only that, but it also seems like manufactured goods have climbed as well. There were things that used to be relatively affordable in the past, but now rising prices made me hesitate to buy them.
Ha-young, as a person who goes grocery shopping at least once a week, it's not just milk. What are other products that are also on the rise in terms of price?
You're right, Dami. Global sugar prices have already hit a 12-year high, hinting at the increased processed food prices for the rest of this year. According to the London International Financial Futures and Options Exchange, about a week ago, the price surpassed $720 per ton. And sugar prices have been falling since surpassing $800 in 2011 and remained at around $500 a ton until last year. And this is due to recent severe droughts and abnormal weather conditions, which have been affecting major sugar exporters. And in particular, India, recognized as the world's largest sugar-producing country, has experienced a sharp decline in sugarcane harvest due to droughts.
And global oil prices, which have been on the rise recently, sank more than 5% on Wednesday. Now, that marked the biggest single-day drop in more than a year. Still, people in South Korea are experiencing pretty costly gasoline costs, right?
You're right. Following the tightened oil supply from the OPEC+, rising oil prices is another concerning factor. According to the Korean National Oil Corporation, as of Monday, the average price of gasoline at gas stations nationwide has increased for 12 consecutive weeks. In fact, the current domestic gasoline prices is approaching 1,800 Korean won per liter. And in response, Seoul's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho stated in a press conference on Thursday that if the global oil price do not stabilize, the government will actively review extending the fuel tax cut measures for 2 more months, which is set to expire at the end of this month.
And another worrisome fact is the rising transportation fare, right?
That's right, Dami. And it is also one of my concerns since I frequently use public transportation. And in fact, subway fares in the capital region have increased starting from October 7th. The Seoul Metropolitan Government announced earlier this week that the basic single-ride subway fare for an adult will be set at 1,400 won, about $1, roughly 10 cents higher than before. The rise is the first in 8 years after a series of meetings on inflation held by the city government's Transportation Fare Adjustment Committee.
Now, Ha-young, will it be difficult to see actually inflation cooling down within the year?
Well, as we've seen in our colleagues' reports, Seoul's finance minister expects the inflation to be eased in October. And meanwhile, one expert I spoke to pointed out the base effect as a factor for the recent rebound in inflation. And this is because the inflation rate had been gradually cooling down due to the base effect, as inflation rates last year were high. But now, as the base effect diminishes, the real inflation rate is becoming apparent. And he also emphasized easing inflation expectations as a measure for the government to control inflation. Take a listen.
If everyone starts expecting prices to keep going up, it tends to trigger a continuous rise. So easing inflation expectations is crucial. That means the government needs to demonstrate its commitment to price stability, securing trust from the public regarding the matter.
Earlier this week, Seoul's top office said the Yoon Suk-yeol administration will focus on improving the cost of living and continue to manage price levels in the fourth quarter of this year.
That will definitely be the #1 priority of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration for the fourth quarter. Let's see what specific measures will be rolled out to actually make economic affairs and people's livelihoods more affordable.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Ha-young, so much for filling us in today.
Always my pleasure.